Back in the day, there was a standalone mod for Half-Life 2 called Nightmare House 2, released in 2010. That mod genuinely scared the hell out of me. It was disturbing, intense, and totally unforgettable as a teenager. Before that, there was Nightmare House 1 in 2005, also for Half-Life 2. It was a shorter, less fleshed out experience, but still creepy in its own right. Both mods were made by a developer called We Create Stuff, the team behind the psychological horror game In Sound Mind. That was my first exposure to their work, and it made me a fan instantly. I remember even messaging them on social media back in the day, asking when Nightmare House 3 would finally drop. So when In Sound Mind was finally announced, I was looking forward to it. Just based on their history, with those mods alone, I knew I had to play In Sound Mind. But something about the promotional material for In Sound Mind threw me off. It leans heavily onto these purpley neon colors. There's a cutesy cat on the box art, and an honestly goofy man in a top hat on the cover. The trailer on Steam even has streamers playing the game being goofy, making all sorts of faces. So I wasn't convinced the tone was as terrifying as their roots in Half-Life modding. Still, I knew these guys were competent developers, and I eventually got the game to see where they had progressed after all these years. In Sound Mind was released in 2021, over 10 years since the Nightmare House 2 mod, the game which made me believe in this developer. And this game, similarly, is a psychological horror game, but it has quite a few tricks up its sleeves. You play as a therapist, Desmond Wales, which after playing the game for a little bit, it clicked with me and I appreciated the concept of playing a psychological horror game where you play as a therapist. You're sort of being stalked by this trenchcoat man in a top hat, which admittedly looks goofy and not very scary at all, who keeps calling phones all around you, and is basically just being negative and taunting you the whole time while he talks to you. The game takes place in a sort of apartment complex with a main elevator that has 3 floors. This building serves as sort of a hub world where you will eventually go back and forth between the 4 different chapters of the game. The chapters are case files where you relive some trauma of one of your patients. The whole concept is innovative and well done. It's a clever idea for a horror game, to be a therapist going in and out of these memories of your patients. Even the world around you in the apartment complex subtly shifts. One moment you can be looking at a painting, then you walk away and come back, and it's an entirely different painting. The game is constantly doing subtle little things to mess with you, which I found pretty entertaining. You start off in the basement, without much of any items to use, but very soon you find a flashlight in typical horror fashion. The flashlight has batteries, and slowly runs down to 0%. However, when it reaches 0%, it still works, just at a diminished power, but it's still bright enough to be useful. You find batteries scattered around the world, seemingly spawned at random, though I could definitely sense the game start to spawn more of certain items once you're low on resources. Like when the flashlight is 0%, it felt like it would ramp up on the battery spawns. Or, when my health was low, I'd find more health items like food. It's an interesting way to handle resources. I do like that the flashlight isn't infinite, because it gives you something to interact with, scrounge for, and it avoids the dreaded 0% dead flashlight in pitch blackness, which can sometimes ruin a game. Even still, most of the time I was playing the game at 0% flashlight battery, and still didn't find enough batteries to really keep me charged, but it didn't really hinder the experience. This isn't a typical walking sim horror game. It has all sorts of items to collect, which all have their use both in puzzle and combat contexts. The game starts off simple, in the basement, where you do simple puzzles like changing fuses from washing machines to power on an elevator, but eventually you collect all sorts of items which are required to progress through the game. It has many locked off areas in the hub apartment where initially you're scratching your head, wondering how to get there, but as you keep playing you realize these are areas that you need to backtrack to with your newfound items in order to progress through them. Each of the game's 4 cases has an item related to it that you keep with you afterwards as you return to the main apartment, and you can use to unlock new areas. One such item is a glass shard used to cut caution tape, and also to look through the glass as a mirror, which reflects hidden details in the environment. This is a neat and innovative addition, and there will be these purple glass shards on the ground, which make a loud audible cracking noise when you step on them, cleverly alerting the player that they can look through the glass piece to find hidden details, such as creepy messages on the walls and hints on how to proceed. However, I did find it a little disorienting and janky trying to look through this glass shard sometimes. Typically it just resulting in me mindlessly spinning the camera around until things in the environment started to glow. You come across other items such as a gas mask, which is obviously used to proceed through these purple gassy areas on the floor, though the gas mask doesn't have a strap, so you have to hold it up to your face, meaning you can't use other items at the same time. This gas mask isn't used all that often, only a few times in the whole game. Maybe they could have done more with it. There's a radio device, which is used to aim at distant electronics boxes to toggle them, which also adds another layer of puzzle solving, because sometimes they will be invisible inside of the walls, and you have to use the glass shard to see them. There's these pills you can find, which you can either consume for some health and a short speed bonus, or you can throw them, which makes them weirdly explode like a little grenade, and also attracts enemies. The game does have combat, a fair amount of it, though there is only really two combat weapons. A pistol, which you find early into the game by collecting a few different pistol parts, and then combining them at a workbench in the basement. Weirdly enough, this is the only time I ever had to use this workbench feature. It's like they just put it in the game, thinking it would be significant, but they only ended up using it for the mandatory pistol segment. The pistol is also required to unlock certain areas, because you need to blow up these barrels to proceed through some areas. There's also a shotgun you can find much later into the game, but I think it's optional and kinda easy to miss. Combat mechanics are serviceable. The animations and guns look okay. It says there's aiming down the sights, but really, when you press the button, it only kinda just zooms in the screen, without any actual iron sights. Accuracy does improve though. You never really have tons of ammo, but I always had at least a few dozen bullets at any given time. A few times I ran out of ammo, and I wasn't really sure what I was supposed to do at that point. I guess just run non-stop, which I did. The game isn't difficult or anything. It has a very forgiving autosave feature, so the few times I die, I didn't go back that far. But really, the overall enjoyment of the game is let down by some very disappointing flaws. Simply the enemy design and monsters are just lame. This is a horror game, but not really at all. The monsters are these multicolored, glowing, transparent things. They almost look like bionicles. It's not scary at all. In fact, when they show up, it sometimes plays rock and roll metal music, like you're some kind of demon-slaying badass from Doom. What tone are they even trying to go for? I hate that I even have to say this, but I think this game might have some of the most disappointing and lamest monster designs of any horror game I've ever played. It's so sad, because everything else is pretty well done. There's only really two monsters in the whole game. A little multicolored transparent guy, and then a big multicolored transparent guy. That's really it. There's places on their body that glow, indicating that if you shoot them there, you will do more damage, I guess. But there's not much to it. The first time they showed up, the game told you to sneak past it. Yeah, I only did that a single time. Every other time it turned into this fast-paced action game, where I just blasted them away. Since they look so non-threatening, it was hard to take it seriously or be intimidated by it. Both the pistol and shotgun were quite serviceable. The shotgun didn't seem that much better, for how it's such an easily missable optional reward. But it's not just the monsters that are off in tone. The whole game just isn't scary. Like, I still enjoy playing it, but it didn't lean too much into the visceral horror vibe. The game has a really oversaturated usage of neon colors everywhere. Bright purples, greens, blues. It doesn't look very gritty. The actual graphics are fine. It runs on Unity engine, but the art direction is very questionable. It's more like a PG-13 horror game for children or something. It's super toned down. Keep in mind this is the developers of Nightmare House, which I thought was actually gripping and creepy. But this game is really toned down and feels more family-friendly compared to that. Even the main top hat antagonist guy, I found lame, both in visuals and even his voice calls came across as being too try-hard, as being this evil antagonist trope.
So, you're heading into Nygaard's Cape, are you? I strongly suggest you don't. You're not equipped, not strong enough. He'll kill you. And that's my job.
I get that it's later revealed that he's supposed to be a projection of the main character's insecurities, but still. So, I'm disappointed about the overall vibe and the lack of scares. Not a single thing in the game made me feel the slightest bit uneasy or anxious, even down to the achievement names. Stuff like 10 out of 10 Game of the Year, and meme references. As a horror game, it's a bit of a failure, but at least everything else around it was decently enjoyable. You make your way back and forth from main hub apartments to the main office on floor 2. Inside your main office, you find a tape deck. This is where you insert tapes, which you find around the world, often acquired by using new items to bypass some obstacle. You put a tape in the tape deck, and it opens this magic door that serves as a portal to another world, aka the next main chapter. However, inside your office there's other things also. There's a cat named Tonya, which frequently shows up. At first the cat just looks at you, but not long into the game, the cat starts talking to you and acting like a companion, and almost this comic relief character.
Keep a level head and find a way through this.
I think the devs are proud of this one, as it's plastered all over the game's marketing, and even the loading screen is a cat icon. While I was complaining previously about the weird tone shift in the game, and how it detracts from the horror atmosphere, I still think this game is better for having the cat companion in it. It's nice to look towards coming back and interacting with this cat. You can pet it, and it will comment on you petting it, and say silly things if you keep petting it too much. The cat talks in a female voice, and is there to guide you through the game and be a trusty ally. It helps add memorability to the experience, and helps differentiate it from all the others in the genre, but you can really see what I mean, where the tone of the game is all over the place, and doesn't lean so much into the isolated horror vibe. There's even these friendly mannequins that frequently pop up, pointing towards places you should go, giving you keys, and morphing and changing as you correctly progress to the game, reinforcing that you're doing the right thing. These things are quirky and amusing when they pop up, but once again reinforces the more whimsical vibe of the game, and less so reduces any tense atmosphere it could have had. The plot and narrative of the game I actually found gripping and was interested to know what happens next. I was interested in each of the 4 patient tapes, and each of them are distinct and memorable. As I said, the premise of being a therapist in a psychological horror game is a clever idea, and the main character Desmond frequently talks to himself as you explore, and is generally a likable character. Each of the game's 4 main tapes are distinct and memorable. At the beginning of each main tape, you start by a road surrounded by water, where you have to do brief platforming sections. In fact, the game has quite a few platforming sections. I don't mind it, because it helps break up the pacing. Like I said earlier, this isn't just another basic walking sim, where you do nothing but walk around and pick up objects, and get jump scared. No, there's platforming, puzzles, combat, problem solving, traps, etc. So you platform around these water areas, listening to tapes as you go. Then you arrive at the main location. Each location is fairly long, and a big slice of map to explore, each lasting over an hour long or more. The first tape is inside a big grocery store, surrounded by water. There's a ghost woman inside, who hates her reflection, and there's mirrors scattered all around, where you can lead her to the mirrors, which shatter and help you progress. There's all sorts of puzzles and items to collect in this store. Toy pieces for a dollhouse puzzle, receipts to do a cash register puzzle to get coins, and even a cool spooky TV room, where you have to point the eyeballs on the TV towards the woman on the big TV, which enrages her. Initially going into each tape, you don't know why you're being chased by each main monster, but at the end of each tape, you fully realize the backstory, and that each monster is a reflection of one of your patients. In the first one, the woman was forced into beauty pageants at a young age, and when she was putting on makeup as a child, she slipped and cut her face after breaking a mirror. That's why she hates looking at her reflection. It all ties together nicely, and does add a dramatic and creepy backstory to each tape. The second tape is about a weird loner who works as a lighthouse watcher. It takes place on a coastal island, which is quite large, and this time you go all around being stalked by this black shade that comes up from the ground and sucks you in, but he goes away in spotlights. This one was perhaps the most annoying. It resulted in just running around like a maniac, dashing towards spotlights. It's a lot of moving fuses around from generator to generator. Here you get the flare gun, which can be used to make the unnatural darkness spots go away, allowing you to progress previously inaccessible areas. This area had some crane puzzles, warehouses, and a few platforming sections. There's even a big boat that you get on and go through and go into these weird hallucinogenic areas. Overall, the second coastal lighthouse tape area probably had the best atmosphere and was the closest to a horror game. The lighthouse guy turns out he shot a flare gun at something that scared him in the dark, catching himself on fire, so that's why he hates darkness, and that's why he's the dark shade that's talked to. The third tape has you basically going from factory to factory in midday while you're being chased by this giant bull vehicle thing. It's about a guy that has anger issues after losing his job at a factory. I think this is my least favorite tape. The locations just aren't that interesting, and it's a lot of stale-looking factories and electricity puzzles. You end up having to make the bull knock down a bunch of walls to progress, having to go from electrical boxes, taking voltage batteries, to and from, doing these electricity puzzles. You eventually get inside the big main factory, where you go room to room doing puzzles, including finding components to make this magical drug pill after doing a valve puzzle, which you then use to lure the bull around. It ends up with this comical boss fight in a pit arena where you're luring the bull to knock down pillars on top of himself, ending the tape. probably the goofiest one of them all. Lastly is a tape about an army veteran with PTSD. It has you going around the outskirts of some army camps in the forest, where you get a radio, which you can use to toggle power boxes and open gates and stuff. You're being chased by a giant angry robot that reminds me of the Strider from Half-Life 2. You just run around avoiding his bullets, trying to find codes for this bunker. The codes are from 4 different radio towers, which you can see glowing in the distance. So it's a lot of trying to figure out how to get to these towers, which at times is a bit aimless and frustrating. But once you get there, you do a simple puzzle with these glowing stars in the sky with the radio, and then you get each of the codes. This level was pretty decent and enjoyable. There's some intense action sequences, like trying to get on a tram ride while being shot at. Eventually it ends in another kind of boss fight on top of a tower, where you press a button to lock onto the enemy robot enough times, and he gets weakened and dies from this giant beam. After the main tapes, there's a final ending tape. This finale starts with an admittedly cringy, almost kind of musical sequence, where the Top Hat guy sings at you from a piano, and then you get into this big floating dreamlike arena, where the Top Hat guy is giant and is floating in the sky, talking shit at you the whole time. You're being swarmed by infinite enemies all around, and you have to sprint to these radio stations. There's a tape recorder at each one, where you put in each tape and record over them. It's a short but intense ending sequence, but once again, it's not exactly horrifying or anything. It's more so silly, with its zero gravity and arcadey gameplay. It's kind of like Zen from Half-Life 1. After you record over all the tapes, you find out the Top Hat guy is just a projection of your insecurities that you've mostly now overcome. I think here it's also revealed that your patients from the tapes actually had tragic deaths, which is why the main character is filled with so much trauma and doubt about his own techniques in therapy. You return back to your main office, and the cat shows up and asks you to go to the roof to basically beat the game, and it hints at a sequel. So that's in sound mind, mostly. A few other things is, there's tons of notes scattered around the game, almost too many. It's like every 15 seconds you come across another note to read. It's actually a little obnoxious. Sometimes there's multiple notes in the same room. It feels a little bit too unbelievable, and too much like the developer is just trying to guide the player, rather than someone actually leaving notes around. That's one of my biggest gripes, besides the lame enemies, and the tone being all over the place and not very scary. The game's soundtrack is also a mixed bag. The atmospheric dark ambient drones are great, but sometimes it plays this like rocking metal music, which I mentioned previously. That felt a little strange. You can also find vinyl records to play music in your office. It's kind of neat, but again it has this musical vibe, like High School Musical with its corny lyrics and singing. It's a bit off-putting in a so-called horror game.
I'm a little bit anxious. I'm a little unsure of where to go. I'm a little kid swallowed by the shadows in the ocean, and I know.
Also, you can actually upgrade your stats. There's items scattered all around the game that are like different boxes of drugs, and when you collect 3 of each of them, it upgrades the stat permanently. The stats are stuff like stealth, speed, health, and I think there's another one. But really, I sensed very little difference in any of this, and it did not seem important at all. Almost just seemed like something to throw into the game to try to give it a little bit more longevity and entice people into collecting them all for achievements. But as far as core gameplay, it barely seemed to matter. The combat was also just okay. It felt more like an afterthought, like it was just shoved in there to say there is combat at all. I do appreciate the game for trying something distinct with its therapist concept and its 4 individual patient tapes with their own individual dream worlds. I like the hub apartment. I like the variety of items and mechanics which you use to progress through the game. It's a fun game, but not exactly a great horror game. If there's going to be a sequel, I do look forward to it, and will play that as well. 7 out of 10.
Are you trying to win an award for best pet or something? This is more for you than it is for me, isn't it? Pet all you want. I'm not giving you my social security number. The pets are strong with this one.